welcome to today's podcast. You are joined by myself as host, Jem Fletcher, and I am joined today by Mr Sal Rassam, Senior Consultant Ophthalmic Surgeon, and also the owner and founder of the Panacea Medical Centre. Welcome, Sal.
Thank you.
Now, Panacea Medical Centre opened up in 2015, is that right?
That's correct.
Good. I want to talk about that in a little bit, but first, just talk to me about sort of your personal journey to get to where you are today.
Well, I started my journey as an ophthalmologist, so I did all my training in London, most of my training, and then went to Australia for a year for a fellowship, for a bit of different experience. Came back to London and then got a consultant job at the trust at Worthing Hospital. And I worked there for 18 years until I decided enough is enough, I need to get out. And hence the Panacea project started.
That's amazing. So what was that sort of turning point to think, actually, 18 years I've dedicated to this trust? Why did you want to then go ahead and set up your own business?
To be honest with you, and I love the NHS. I loved working for the NHS, but it's not a perfect establishment, as we all know. The ophthalmology is a very fast-growing specialty. There's always something new. There's always new treatments, new techniques. Unfortunately, it's not always offered immediately within the NHS. It takes a long time to introduce any new treatments. So that was getting a little bit frustrating. I did a lot of research, but then with the workload that's coming through the NHS, unfortunately, my research had to be put on hold, so I couldn't do proper research work. And then I reached a grand age when I decided, okay, I think it's time for me to lay my cards within the NHS and establish Panacea. So that's my journey. After 34 years in the NHS, I think I deserve to treat myself with a little bit of quieter time. But that's what I thought. Yeah. But it isn't that much of an easy journey going through Panacea, because Panacea was established from the ground, from nothing. So literally it was an empty church for a good 8 years. Belonged to the United Reformed Church, and when it came up for sale, I took a friend of mine who was an architect. He looked at it and said, wow, this is amazing. This will make a fantastic eye clinic or a hospital for you if you want. It's the way the architecture of the original church is so unique. It's not like a lot of the traditional churches, the Gothic churches. They have a lot of columns, a lot of small corridors. This was one giant open space with beautiful features, beautiful stained glass, and it certainly lent itself to conversion quite nicely. So we went through that journey with the architect. We literally kept the outside shell of the original church, which has the unique features. So we tried to preserve as much of the unique features as possible, all the old columns, the stained glass, but within the outside shell, we built new foundations to house a three-story clinic, a three-story building. So at the moment, it comprises of three-story outpatients block and a dedicated theatre and day surgery unit with 2 operating theatres, and on top of that, we have an administration suite and a conference centre.
Now, that in itself is a huge undertaking to transform it and keep the original features but actually make it a functioning clinical space. That probably would be enough to put anyone off, but you kept going and it looks fantastic. But what was the process like?
Well, to be honest with you, I had times when saying, what am I doing this? But, I'm so glad now it's worked out so well. The process is not easy because you have to get council permission, although it wasn't that difficult because both the churches and hospital and healthcare premises are both band D, so it was just trying to get a change in use, so that wasn't much of a problem. The problem is really to start off with me starting off with not knowing how hospitals are built, because I'm just a clinician and nothing else. So I had to learn very, very fast. And so I had to take the advice of contractors, of many consultants, of builders, of architects, and so on. And then we built the specs as we went along, really. The good thing about it is when you have a very understanding architect who works very closely with me. And in fact, he was so good. He was halfway through the project, he was headhunted by a really major job in New Zealand. So he had to go and abandon me, but I had his colleagues covered up. So that's fine. At least the major work and the plans were all in place. So yeah, that took a long time. That took about 18 months of building work and conversion, a lot of problems on the way. And then when we received the keys, there is always snagging to go through, so that took another 3 months. Then we had to go through commissioning, we had to go through cleaning, we had to go through equipping the hospital. We get CQC approval, that took a good 9 months as well. So it wasn't an easy journey, it's a long way, but it was challenging, and I was up for a challenge, and I'm very happy to say that it's worked out nicely at the very end.
What do you think was harder, actually running a business or being a surgeon?
Surgery to me is a doddle. I've done it so many years. It's just, I won't say I do it blindfolded, but you know what I mean. But, you know, I'm not a builder. I had to learn fast. I'm not a businessman, and I had to learn very fast. So nothing like being put at the deep end. That's one thing good for doctors and surgeons, is we know how to deal with a situation when we're confronted with problems.
Yeah, your stress management is just very calm all the time, no matter what goes on around you, which
Absolutely.
is definitely required.
You have to be.
But actually, with Panacea, so your profession is in eyes, but actually the Panacea business model is more than that, because there's actually loads of services available, isn't there?
That's right. I mean, when I developed the centre, it wasn't aimed purely for eyes. It was aimed to be a multidisciplinary centre. And the other services just came along after I established the eye services there. So at the moment we have podiatry services, we have orthopedic musculoskeletal services, we have cosmetics, we have an audiology service, and a psychology department. And we're in the process of expanding. There is provisions of taking on NHS contracts. We're now negotiating with the CBI and other commissioning groups, and we're hoping to take on paying clinics as well.
That's amazing. And do you think learning all of these processes and stuff, does it give you a bit more sympathy for what sort of the NHS and stuff has to go through? Because there's a lot of governance, there's a lot of commissioning that goes around it, and it's a lot that you don't necessarily see when you're in a clinical position.
I've been in the heart of it since Worthing Hospital days, really, since I was working for the NHS, because ultimately we are part of the administration. We have to make sure that audits are carried out, CQC instructions are all done, hand hygiene, etc., etc. So it was all part of our everyday experience. So that was the easy part, I have to say. That wasn't much of a difficulty. The difficulty really is trying to establish the services and get the contracts in and get the work done and get staffing and so on.
Yeah. And in terms of staffing, obviously it's grown, so you now have an administrative team as well.
I do, and it's changing all the time. It's growing all the time. As the services expand, of course, more people are employed to do more of the work.
So in terms of business and sort of the challenges that you've learned along the way, what sort of advice would you give to somebody that is looking to set up a business, whether that's allow more time or anything?
I think the most important thing is planning. Plan ahead. And do your own research. Yes, you can get a lot of help from other people. My problem is that my time was limited because I was still involved in clinical work. So I had to rely heavily on the advice of other specialists to tell me what is needed. But actually, it transpired that I was duplicating a lot of the work. I was getting all the wrong equipment. There was quite a lot of wastage at the beginning until you learned the process. And now, looking hindsight, I would have done it differently, because I would have taken the time to actually check every single detail before you implement it. And that's so important, especially if it's your own business. And once you start the business, you have to be working in every department to understand the workflow, to understand how the work is done, what is required, and therefore when you guide the staff as they employ them, then you make sure that they're doing the right thing.
Was there any point when you were setting up this business that you felt like it was a bit overwhelming, and did you make the right decision? Like, did you ever second guess that if it was the right thing to do, or did you know?
I'm sure we all have those moments, really. At times of hardship, you always think, what have I got myself into? But, it's rewarding at the end. And to me, providing the best of care for my patient is my priority number one. So when I wanted to start ophthalmology as a private sector, I wanted to make sure that all my patients have the best choice of care. That's the ultimately, what every person deserves. And essentially, everything builds around that. So that's, once you have that, then the services and everything will sort of get together around it, of course with the help of many other people and administrators and nursing staff and supporting staff.
And then in terms of people that are looking at going into the medical profession, which is just a completely different set of skills that you need, I guess you really need to want that, because the training is extensive. It's a real life choice, isn't it?
It's not easy to become a doctor, as you know, and I'm sure a lot of people have gone through it and contemplating it. I'll tell you a little story, though. My daughter was doing A-levels literally 2 years ago, and she was one of the COVID A-level students. And bless her, she worked really her socks off, and she got 5 A stars. However, she was really keen to do medicine. Part of the work experience that they do in A-levels is that she went and spoke to 2 GPs and a pediatrician. And I'm sorry to say, every single one of them told her not to do medicine, which is really disheartening. I mean, I told her, no, please don't listen to them. But that's the situation at the moment, is that it's so underrated specialty and a career, and so pushed down all the time, and they're under so much stress and under so much heavy workload, that's not really becoming very enjoyable specialty. And I'm sorry she didn't go into medicine, and in a way she's doing optometry, which is something similar, and she's now thinking of when she graduates she'll go back into medicine. But this is a situation at the moment, unfortunately. It's a pity, but that's the life we live in. All I can say is that medicine is not all about working in hospitals. There's many avenues to medicine. There is working in the community, there's working for pharmaceutical industry, working in research. There are loads of avenues. So please, my advice to everybody, don't get disheartened. Just, if you like medicine, go into it.
Absolutely. And why did you choose eyes? So when you chose your speciality, where did that come about?
This is a story
Eyes make me scream a little bit.
In my younger days, in the early 70s, my father had an eye condition that at the time nobody knew much about it and nobody could treat it. And he was slowly and gradually losing vision in one eye. So he had to go to the United States, where he was initially told there is no treatment. A few years later, they told him, there's a new treatment called laser, which was just up and becoming then. So he went and had laser treatment in the US of A. But again, it was a new specialty. They were just learning as they're applying it. There's one guy in Germany by the name of Meyer Schwickerath. He didn't have a laser, but he harvested the sun rays to produce a very narrow beam, just like a laser. And he was treating very small lesions like my father had. So he went there and had the treatment. It was very successful and restored his vision. So ever since I was a child, I was so fixated about eyes, lasers, technology, something new. So that was really my path. That created my path for me. So I was determined to become an eye specialist from a young age.
Good thing you're not squeamish then. I cannot bear the thought of having laser eye surgery so that I can see clearly. It just freaks me out totally. So going back to Panacea then, so it opened in 2015 and it has grown significantly since then. But what does the future look like? What are your ambitions for the medical centre?
Well, I mean, there's always need for health services. And now we're going into hopefully attracting NHS work as well in order to help and support the NHS. So there's plenty of space. Panacea was built with the ultimate aim is to provide different specialties. I use a very, very small portion of that space. So hopefully, as we expand, we'll offer more services, more NHS work, and we take off the load from the NHS.
Yeah, that's amazing. Lovely. Anything else you want to say to our listeners?
Well, all I can say is it's a historic building built in 1903, and from the outside it looks no different than the old church, but from the inside is ultra modern. And if anybody wants to come around and have a look, they're always more than welcome.
Lovely. Thank you so much for joining me today, Sal. I really appreciate that.
The pleasure is mine, Gemma. Thank you.
Thank you.
Consultant Sal and his colleagues are all medically trained in their profession, and Panacea Medical Centre is regulated by the Care Quality Commission. As mentioned, they offer a wide range of treatments and services from eye care all the way down to total foot care, so get in contact with them.